I'll never forget the moment I saw the message that changed everything. It wasn't even meant for me. I was just looking for my charger, that's all. My wife, Erin, had borrowed it earlier that day, and I figured she left it in her purse. I didn't think twice about reaching in. That's when I saw her phone screen light up, and my name wasn't on it, but my best friend's was. It was just a preview, one line from a text, but it hit like a gut punch. Last night was incredible, can't stop thinking about it. From Matt. Matt. My best friend since college. The man who stood beside me at my wedding. The godfather to my son. The guy I trusted with everything. I just stood there, holding her phone, staring at that glowing screen like it was a grenade. My ears started ringing, my chest tightened, and I swear for a second I forgot how to breathe. It felt like someone had rewound my entire life and pointed out just how blind I'd been. I didn't say anything right away. I wish I could tell you I burst into the room and demanded answers. That I screamed, flipped the table, made a scene like in the movies. But no. I slid her phone back into the purse like it was some kind of poisonous snake, walked out of the room, and sat in the garage for a long time, just breathing. Thinking. Numbing out. You know what the worst part is? It didn't even surprise me. Things between Erin and me hadn't been great for a while. We were still living together, eating dinner together, sleeping in the same bed, but that feeling, that spark, it had disappeared, and neither of us had bothered to go looking for it. I just thought it was one of those phases couples go through. I didn't think she'd go looking for it, with him. I wanted to scream, to break something, but the more I thought about it, the colder I felt. Not angry. Just empty. Like someone had pulled a rug from under my entire life and I was still midair, waiting to hit the ground. That night, she kissed me on the cheek before bed like nothing had happened. I lay next to her in silence, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long it had been going on. How many times they'd met while I was working late or out with the kid. How many times they laughed behind my back, thinking I was too blind to notice. And Matt. I introduced them. I brought him into my home. He played with my son, toasted with us at Thanksgiving, helped me put up drywall in the garage. I told him things I never told anyone else. That kind of betrayal doesn't just sting, it changes you. But I didn't confront them. Not yet. I wanted to be sure. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. So I started watching. Listening. Playing the part of the clueless husband while I gathered every piece of truth I could get my hands on. I checked phone records. Installed a small voice recorder under the passenger seat of Erin's car. I told myself I was going crazy, paranoid. But every clue I found just tightened the knot in my chest. Tuesday lunches that didn't make sense. Phone calls that ended the moment I entered the room. Subtle smiles when she read a text and thought I wasn't looking. And then there was the hotel receipt I found in her coat pocket. Folded neatly. One night. A boutique hotel downtown. I hadn't been there. But Matt had. I remembered him posting from the bar a few weeks ago. I thought it was a work thing. Turns out, it was. Just not the kind of work I had in mind. I sat on that information for days. Smiling when I had to. Laughing at Matt's dumb jokes when we hung out. Pretending I didn't see the way Erin would glance at him just a second too long. That's when I decided. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg. I was going to take my time and make them feel what I felt, slowly, deeply, without them even realizing it was coming. Revenge is a strange thing. It doesn't fix you. Doesn't erase the betrayal. But it gives you a kind of clarity, a purpose. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. First, I started with Matt. I knew more about him than anyone else. His secrets. His insecurities. The things he told me after a few too many beers. I knew about the shady loan he took out for that startup he never told his wife about. I knew about the night he drove home drunk and hit a mailbox, then lied to the insurance company. I even knew about the flirtatious messages he exchanged with a coworker, messages his boss wouldn't be too thrilled about if they surfaced. I started compiling everything. Every screenshot, voicemail, financial trail. Carefully. Quietly. I wanted to build something he couldn't deny, something that would make his life unravel at the seams, just like mine did the moment I saw the text. As for Erin, that would take more finesse. More patience. I didn't want to just hurt her. I wanted her to live in the wreckage of what she'd done. To watch her lies fall apart, one by one, while I smiled politely and told her everything was fine. Because nothing was fine. And soon, neither of them would be either. You'd be surprised how easy it is to pretend everything's fine when you've got revenge on your mind. In fact, it made me sharper, calmer, even friendlier. Erin thought I was turning over a new leaf, trying to reconnect, as she liked to call it. And Matt just thought I was still blind. The day after I found that hotel receipt, I invited him over for a drink. No reason, just two old friends catching up on a Friday night. Erin was working late, supposedly, which almost made me laugh out loud. But I smiled, offered him a beer, and we sat on the porch like we'd done 100 times before. He looked relaxed. Too relaxed. Like someone who thought they had it all under control. "So, how's work?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Busy, man," he said, leaning back in the chair. "Lot of projects going on. But good. You know how it is." I nodded, watching his eyes. He couldn't look me in the face for more than a few seconds. That told me everything. "You ever think about moving on from your firm?" I said, fishing. "Starting something new?" He laughed. "What, and give up the stress and 70-hour weeks?" "Never." I chuckled along with him, but I was already a step ahead. I knew he was itching to go out on his own. He'd told me that a year ago, over whiskey and frustration. He wanted freedom. Control. But he didn't have the capital. Or the clean credit. Which made what I was about to do even more delicious. Later that night, after he left, I sent an anonymous tip to his company's HR department, attaching screenshots of his inappropriate messages to the junior employee, along with a polite note, "You may want to look into how your senior staff are representing the company." I knew it wouldn't get him fired immediately, corporate moves slow, but it would plant the seed. Put pressure on him. Make him sweat. But that was just the appetizer. Next, I called a friend of mine, someone Matt didn't know. A private investigator I'd once helped with some legal paperwork. In exchange for a favor, he agreed to pull some threads, Matt's loan, his driving record, even his personal messages. All things I couldn't get myself without tipping my hand. Within a week, I had everything. Copies of the falsified documents he submitted for that business loan. Footage from a traffic camera the night he hit that mailbox. GPS records that showed his car parked outside that hotel at the same time as Erin's. The noose was tightening. And they had no idea. But revenge isn't just about cold facts. It's also about emotion. Timing. Making them doubt everything they think is true. So I played the loving husband. Made dinner. Took Erin out for a weekend trip. Let her think the storm had passed. One night, as we sat on the couch, she leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder like she used to. I stiffened, just slightly, and she noticed. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. I turned to her and smiled. "Nothing," I said. "Just tired. Work's been heavy." She looked at me for a moment like she was searching for something in my face. Guilt, maybe. Suspicion. But I gave her nothing. That's when I knew I'd really gotten under her skin. People like Erin think they're good at hiding things. But guilt changes them. Makes them overcompensate. Be too affectionate, too attentive. And the more she tried to make things right, the more it disgusted me. Because I knew the truth, and she didn't know that I knew. That's power. And I wasn't ready to give it up yet. A week later, I accidentally left a file open on my laptop at home. One that looked like it contained financial data for a side project I was working on, something real enough to be believable, but fake enough not to matter. Erin saw it. She didn't mention it right away, but I caught her looking through it the next day. I even watched her copy a file onto a flash drive when she thought I wasn't home. And just like that, I knew she was starting to turn on me. It didn't take a genius to figure out what was happening. She was getting nervous. Maybe Matt was talking about leaving his wife. Maybe he was pushing Erin to do the same. And she wanted leverage in case things got messy. But that was exactly what I wanted. I wanted them to think they were ahead. To think they were smart. That they could build a future on the ashes of my life without paying the price. So I laid the final trap. I set up a fake email account and posed as a potential investor for Matt's future business. I sent him a message saying I'd heard great things through a mutual contact and wanted to discuss funding a startup. Attached were mock documents, impressive numbers, and a meeting invitation at an upscale restaurant downtown. He took the bait. Hook, line, and ego. The day of the meeting, I made sure Erin was conveniently out of the house, having lunch with a friend. I called Matt that morning, pretending not to know anything, just asking if he wanted to catch a game that weekend. He was distracted, overly polite, already thinking about the meeting. That night, I watched from a table across the restaurant as Matt sat down, dressed too nicely, looking excited, maybe a little nervous. He ordered wine. Checked his phone. Waited. No one showed up, of course. Instead, a man he didn't recognize slid a thick envelope onto the table in front of him and walked away. Inside were printed copies of everything, his texts with Erin, the hotel receipt, the inappropriate messages, the loan papers, even a photo of his car next to Erin's at the hotel, courtesy of that traffic cam footage. I watched him turn pale. He stood up so fast he knocked over the wine glass. I didn't approach him. I just watched him rush out of that restaurant like the building was on fire. The next day, Erin was quiet. Jumpy. She barely ate breakfast. Kept checking her phone like she was waiting for a bomb to go off. That's when I knew he had told her. But I still didn't say a word. Because the best part wasn't watching them squirm. It was knowing that I still had cards left to play. And they hadn't even seen the worst one yet. After the restaurant incident, the silence between Erin and me became deafening. Not the kind of silence that comes from comfort or routine, the kind that weighs on your chest like a secret waiting to be spilled. She moved through the house like a ghost, avoiding eye contact, her phone glued to her hand like a lifeline. She was unraveling, and it was almost beautiful to watch. But I still didn't say a word. Every night, I'd sit beside her on the couch, pretending to scroll through news on my phone, pretending to fall asleep early, pretending not to notice the text alerts she thought she was hiding. I wasn't just playing the part of the clueless husband anymore, I was mastering it. Because the longer I stayed silent, the more power I had. The more her mind worked against her. A few days later, she finally cracked. We were having dinner, just the two of us, candles lit like old times, her attempt to bring us closer. She made pasta, poured wine, even put on that soft jazz playlist she used to love. But it all felt so fake, like a play being performed in a collapsing theater. She cleared her throat halfway through the meal, twisting the stem of her wine glass like it held all her guilt. "Can I ask you something?" she said, too softly. I nodded, not looking up. "Do you trust me?" I raised my eyes slowly. Held her gaze just long enough to let the question hang in the air. I could see it in her face, she was scared I knew. She didn't know what I knew or how much, but she could feel the shift. She could feel me slipping away. "Of course," I said, lying so easily it almost scared me. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Good," she whispered, as if trying to convince herself more than me. Later that night, when she thought I was asleep, she snuck into the guest room and made a phone call. I'd already planted a small recording device behind the dresser. I lay there in bed, listening through the tiny earpiece like a man watching his own funeral. Her voice was shaky. She was whispering. "Matt, I don't know what to do. I think he knows something, he's been acting strange." There was a long pause. "No, he hasn't said anything. But it's like he's waiting for something." Another pause. "No, we can't, not now. Not until we're sure. Just lay low, okay? We'll figure it out." I wanted to laugh, scream, throw something through the wall, but I just lay there, listening to her call the man who used to be my brother like he was her savior. As if they were in this together. As if I were the problem. But that was fine. Let them feel paranoid. Let them think they were in control. Because I had something they didn't, time. The next step in my plan came quietly, like most revenge does. I didn't need to destroy them all at once. That would have been too easy. I wanted them to fall apart slowly, from the inside out. I wanted them to feel their world collapse one quiet crack at a time. So I started with Erin's job. She worked at a local media company, account manager, solid reputation, good performance reviews. But her boss was strict about company policy, especially personal conduct. She once told me about a coworker who got fired for misusing the company car. So I sent an anonymous tip, just like I had with Matt, about how she was regularly using company time and resources to conduct a personal affair, and how there were receipts and location data to support it. Of course, I made sure the email included enough vague but realistic detail to sound credible. A photo of her car in that hotel parking lot during work hours helped seal it. I didn't expect her to get fired immediately. But again, it was about erosion. Doubt. Making her feel the ground shift under her feet. Meanwhile, I doubled down on being the perfect husband. Cleaned the house. Took our son to school. Bought groceries. I even suggested therapy. That last one really threw her off. "You'd be open to couples therapy?" she asked, eyes wide, like I'd just offered to move to Mars. "Sure," I said, smiling. "I think it'd be good for us." She looked so guilty I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. We scheduled the session, and she spent the next week acting like she was trying to make things work, cooking dinner, texting me in the middle of the day, complimenting my shirts, touching my arm as she passed by. I knew it was all a performance, but I played along. I wanted her to think maybe, just maybe, she still had me. The day of the session, I sat across from her in that quiet little office, watching her twist her wedding ring around her finger like it was burning her skin. The therapist asked why we were there. "I think we've lost our connection," she said quickly. "I just want us to get back to where we used to be." I nodded slowly. "I want to rebuild trust," I said, carefully. The therapist smiled, encouraged us to be open. Erin talked for almost half the session, about how we'd grown distant, how work had taken a toll, how she sometimes felt like I didn't see her anymore. I listened. Nodded. Asked thoughtful questions. I made her look like the villain of her own excuses without ever saying a single accusing word. When the session ended, the therapist praised us both for being willing to engage. Erin looked at me in the parking lot, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for not giving up on us," she whispered. I kissed her forehead. And I felt nothing. Because while she was busy pretending to fix something, I was dismantling everything behind the curtain. I had already mailed an envelope to Matt's wife, Jenny. It was thick, packed with every scrap of evidence, every photo, every message, every lie. I didn't include a return address, just a note inside that said, "You deserve the truth. I'm sorry you had to find out this way." And I knew Jenny. She wasn't like Erin. She wouldn't sweep it under the rug. She wouldn't protect him. She would burn everything to the ground. I gave her just enough time to open the envelope before I invited Matt over for a barbecue. Just the two of us. Old friends. Catching up. Like nothing had ever changed. He showed up wearing that same smug, easygoing grin. But his eyes looked tired. Hollow. We grilled steaks, drank beers. I asked about his wife. He said things were complicated. "I've been thinking a lot about life lately," I said, flipping a burger. "How quickly things can change." He nodded, sipping his drink. "Yeah. You never really know people, do you?" I smiled and looked him right in the eye. "No. You don't." Matt stayed longer than he should have. Maybe he thought that by clinging to our old rituals, beer, steaks, small talk, he could somehow undo what had been done. Or maybe he just didn't know yet. Maybe Jenny hadn't said anything. Not yet. But his hands kept fidgeting. His eyes wandered. He laughed a little too loudly at things that weren't funny. Something in him had shifted. And I could feel it. I watched him eat the burger I'd grilled, chewing slowly like every bite was a question he didn't know how to ask. And I just kept smiling. Calm. Patient. Like a hunter who already knows exactly when the trap will spring. As we sat in lawn chairs watching the sun go down, he finally broke the silence. You ever think about, I don't know, how things would have turned out if we'd made different choices? He didn't look at me when he said it. He was staring straight ahead, like the question was meant for the trees. Sure, I said. All the time. He nodded, rubbing his palms together. Like, if we'd been a little braver. Or a little more careful. There it was. Guilt. Not bold enough to confess, not smart enough to hide it completely. Just leaking out around the edges. I sipped my drink. Regret's a strange thing. It either teaches you or eats you alive. He turned to look at me then. Really look. And for a second, I could see the man I used to call my brother, the one who'd stood beside me at my wedding, who'd helped me move 3 times, who held my newborn son in the hospital like he was family. But that man had vanished the moment he touched my wife. Now there was just this hollow shell of him. I need to tell you something, he said suddenly. My heart didn't race. I didn't flinch. I just waited. But before he could say another word, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, looked at the screen, and his face turned pale. Everything okay? I asked casually. He stood up. I have to go. I nodded, watching him stumble across the lawn like he was trying to outrun the guilt now screaming in his pocket. Jenny had opened the envelope. Game on. The next day, I got a text from Aaron in the middle of my meeting, we need to talk tonight. Please. That was all it said. No heart emoji, no love you. Just panic disguised as urgency. When I got home, she was already sitting on the couch, waiting, her face drained of color. Her phone was beside her, flipped screen down. She stood when I entered, but she didn't come closer. Matt's marriage is falling apart, she blurted out. Jenny knows. I tilted my head slightly. Knows what? She swallowed hard, her voice cracking. She knows about the affair. There it was. Out in the open. I let the silence stretch. I watched her squirm. I wanted her to confess it all, willingly, shamefully. She wrapped her arms around herself like she was cold. It's over, she said. It's been over for weeks. I ended it. I swear to you. I raised my eyebrows. You ended it. Not him. Yes, she said quickly. I realized it was a mistake. I was confused. Lonely. You and I, we were so distant. There it was, the excuse. The deflection. I could practically hear the therapist's voice in her head, feeding her lines to lessen the blow. I'd almost forgotten how good she was at playing the victim. I walked over and sat down. How long? She blinked. What? How long were you sleeping with him? Her lips trembled. 8 months. That number hit me like a fist to the ribs, but I didn't let it show. 8 months, I repeated, nodding slowly. While we were trying for another baby. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you. You didn't want to tell me, I corrected. She sank to the floor in front of me, gripping my knees. I don't want to lose our family. I messed up. I know that. But I'm begging you, please don't let this destroy us. The irony was brutal. She had already destroyed us. I reached down and gently removed her hands from my knees. I need time, I said, voice low. She nodded, crying harder now. Anything. I'll do anything. I stood up and walked out of the room. Not because I needed space, but because I didn't want her to see me smile. Over the next week, Jenny filed for divorce. She threw Matt out of the house, froze the joint accounts, and went full scorched earth in every way possible. And I didn't lift a finger to help him. He called me. Texted me. Left voicemails that got increasingly desperate. Please, man, I need to talk to you. I messed everything up. I need your help. I didn't respond. Not once. He came by the house one evening, banging on the door like a madman. Erin ran to answer it, but I stopped her. I'll handle it, I said calmly. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Matt looked like a shadow of the man I used to know. Unshaven, eyes bloodshot, shoulders hunched. You told her, he said. You told Jenny. I met his gaze. No. I didn't. His face twisted. Then who? She figured it out, I said. All on her own. Isn't that interesting? He took a step closer. Listen, I never meant for it to happen like this. Erin and I, it was a mistake. 8 months of mistakes, I said, my voice still calm. He flinched. I know. I know I betrayed you. But I'm still your friend. I stared at him for a long time. No, Matt. You're not. Friends don't do what you did. He looked down, ashamed. What do you want me to say? Nothing, I said. There's nothing you can say that'll fix this. He stood there, lost, like a man realizing he'd burned the last bridge that ever truly mattered. I turned and went back inside. Behind me, he didn't follow. A few nights later, Erin tried to get close again. She came into the bedroom wearing one of those old shirts of mine she used to steal, the one that hung loosely off her shoulder. She sat beside me on the bed, eyes red from crying, voice barely above a whisper. I love you, she said. I always have. I looked at her, really looked at her. And I remembered the woman I married. The way she used to dance barefoot in the kitchen. The way she cried when our son was born. The way she used to reach for my hand in crowded rooms. And then I remembered the hotel. The lies. The way she called out his name on the phone when she thought I wasn't listening. I'm sorry, she said again. Please tell me there's a chance. I took a deep breath. And I lied. Maybe. I started sleeping in the guest room. Erin didn't ask why. She didn't protest, didn't cry, at least not in front of me. She tiptoed around the house like a tenant afraid of being evicted. She cooked dinner every night. Folded my laundry. Left post-it notes with little reminders and "I love you" scribbled in ink that looked more desperate than affectionate. But I said very little. I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't yelling or blaming. I just didn't see the point. Words meant nothing now. They had been devalued, cheapened by every lie she'd whispered to him while I was out working late, trying to provide for a life I thought we were building together. And I think that silence, that was what really broke her. One night, I came home late from work, on purpose. I had sat in the car for a while, just watching the lights of the house. When I finally stepped inside, she was at the dining table, a glass of wine untouched in front of her, eyes swollen. I made dinner, she said softly. I ate, I replied. A pause. Where? Does it matter? She looked down. Her fingers toyed with the base of the wine glass. Do you hate me? I didn't answer right away. I walked past her, poured myself a glass of water, took a long drink. Then I turned around and looked her dead in the eyes. No. I don't hate you, Erin. I just don't know who you are anymore. That made her cry, of course. Quietly. Like she was trying not to disturb the air between us. I didn't comfort her. She didn't ask me to. People think revenge is loud, dramatic. Some kind of grand gesture. A slap, a shout, a public explosion. But real revenge, the kind that lasts, it's quiet. It's calculated. It's patient. Over the next few weeks, I made changes. Small at first. I updated passwords. Opened new bank accounts. Rerouted some funds from our joint savings into a separate account in my name only. Then I met with a lawyer. Not for divorce. Not yet. I wanted to know my options, custody, asset division, everything. I didn't want to act out of emotion. I wanted to be strategic, surgical. The lawyer, a woman in her early 50s with sharp eyes and a sharper voice, listened to everything I told her. She didn't flinch when I said the words, "My wife cheated on me with my best friend." She just nodded and started asking questions. How long was the affair? 8 months, I said. Do you have proof? I don't need proof. She admitted it. She tilted her head. It helps to have it in writing. I have that too, I said, and slid my phone across the desk. I showed her the envelope. The photos. A few old text screenshots I'd pulled from our shared iPad she didn't know I still had access to. A couple of emails Matt had sent from his work account. Sloppy. Amateur. She gave me a long look. You've been sitting on this for a while. Yes. Why? I leaned back in my chair. Because I'm not trying to destroy her in court. I'm trying to make sure when I walk away, she understands what she lost. Not just money. Not just custody. Everything. She gave a small nod, almost a smirk. Then you're going to need a plan. I started taking our son, Jacob, out more often, just the two of us. To the park, the movies, the beach. Erin would ask if she could come, and I'd smile and say, I think it's good for him to have dad time. And the truth was, Jacob clung to me more now. He was still young, maybe too young to understand everything, but kids know when things change. He'd started asking why mommy cried at night. Why daddy slept in the other room. I didn't lie to him. I didn't give him the full truth either. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, I told him. And when they do, we all have to figure out what happens next. He nodded like that made sense, but I could see the sadness behind his eyes. That sadness made me furious. Not at him. At her. At Matt. They had treated their affair like it was a private sin, something they could contain between stolen kisses and text messages. But it leaked. It poisoned everything. And my son, he was the one breathing in that poison. Matt tried reaching out again. This time through a mutual friend, Tom, who I hadn't seen in a while. Tom invited me out for coffee, then halfway through the conversation, dropped the real reason he was there. Matt's not doing well. I shrugged. I imagine not. He's living with his brother now. Lost his house, his job's on thin ice, Jenny's going after full custody. Actions have consequences. Tom looked uncomfortable. He says you never gave him a chance to explain. He had 8 months, I said coldly. He used them to sleep with my wife. Tom was quiet after that. I paid for my coffee and left. At home, Erin was trying harder than ever. She started therapy. Left self-help books on the coffee table. Asked if we could try couples counseling. I agreed. Not because I wanted to fix things. Because I wanted to see how far she'd go to preserve the illusion. In therapy, she cried. She confessed. She admitted everything in vivid detail, trying to paint herself as broken, confused, overwhelmed. I felt invisible, she said. Like I didn't matter anymore. And Matt, he made me feel seen. The therapist asked me how that made me feel. I looked Erin in the eye and said, it made me feel like I married a stranger. Erin broke down again, and the therapist said it was progress. I smiled politely. But every time Erin came close, every time she reached for my hand or leaned in to kiss me goodnight, I felt nothing but cold. And I knew the day was coming. I waited 2 more weeks. Long enough to finish restructuring finances. To secure a new apartment nearby, one close enough to Jacob's school that I could build a strong custody case. Then one night, as we sat across from each other at the dinner table, I placed a manila folder in front of her. What's this? She asked, already sensing. Everything, I said. Inside was the timeline. The bank transfers. The photographic evidence. A copy of the statement she gave to the therapist admitting the affair. A preliminary custody plan. A draft divorce agreement. All neatly organized. She didn't open it. She just stared at me. You said maybe, she whispered. You said there was still a chance. I nodded. There was. And I gave you that chance. I watched you. I listened. I waited. And you know what I realized? Her voice broke. What? You're only sorry because you got caught. She tried to speak, but I raised my hand. I've already talked to Jacob. I told him we're going to live in a new place soon, just the 2 of us. You can visit. I'll make sure of that. But this, I motioned to the house, to us, this is over. Tears streamed down her face. Please don't do this. But I stood up. I already did. The hardest part wasn't walking away from the marriage. It was watching Jacob cry as I packed my bags. He clung to my leg that morning, his tiny fingers digging into my jeans, asking again and again, why can't we all stay together? I knelt down, held his face in my hands, and looked him straight in the eyes. Because sometimes, buddy, people break promises. And when they do, we have to protect ourselves. But this doesn't mean I'm leaving you. You and me, we're a team, okay? That'll never change. He didn't fully understand. How could he? He was just a kid. But he nodded anyway, wiping his nose on his sleeve. Erin stood by the doorway, her eyes bloodshot, hair unbrushed. She hadn't said a word since I handed her the divorce papers. She tried to stop me once, just once. As I zipped the last suitcase, she stepped forward and grabbed my arm. I made a mistake, she said in a choked voice. I know that now. Can't we start over? Go somewhere new, fix it away from here. I stared at her. Start over. I repeated. You started over the moment you invited him into our bed. She flinched. I shook her off gently, took Jacob's hand, and walked out without looking back. The new apartment was small, but clean. 2 bedrooms, lots of light, quiet neighborhood. Jacob liked the blue curtains I let him pick out. I let him decorate his room however he wanted. Posters, Legos, pillows shaped like dinosaurs. It wasn't the house we had before, but it felt like home in a way that place hadn't for months. There was peace here. Silence that didn't feel like punishment. I'd wake up early, make Jacob breakfast, walk him to school, and then dive into work. I was more focused than ever. Fueled by something I couldn't even name, rage, maybe. Or pride. Or the deep, aching need to prove I wasn't broken. I wasn't the man they tried to tear down. I was stronger. Sharper. And I hadn't forgotten Matt. I didn't reach out to him directly. That would have been too easy. Too emotional. I wanted him to feel it slowly, like acid in water. So I went to someone who knew him even better than I did. Jenny. His ex-wife. She was wary at first, of course. When I called her and said, I think we have something in common, she went silent. I'm Erin's husband, I added. She let out a breath, half laughter, half disbelief. Wow. Took you long enough. I'm doing something about it now, I said. And I think you might want in. We met at a small cafe near her office. She looked good, sharper than I remembered from the few times we'd crossed paths at barbecues and birthdays. Her blonde hair was pinned back, no rings on her fingers, no softness in her eyes. Is this revenge or closure? She asked as she stirred her coffee. Both, I said honestly. He took something from me. Lied to my face for almost a year. I trusted him with everything. I want him to feel what it's like to lose something that matters. Jenny nodded. He already has. Lost the house. The promotion he was up for disappeared the second HR caught wind of the affair. He's living in his brother's basement. Drinking more than he should. I think he thought Erin would leave you and they'd start fresh. She didn't, I said. Not on her terms anyway. Jenny smirked. Good. We talked for over an hour. Shared stories. Compared timelines. I showed her a copy of the evidence folder. She showed me the custody documents she was filing, full custody, citing infidelity and emotional instability. You know what the worst part is, she said toward the end. It wasn't even about love. Not for him. It was just the thrill. The ego. Getting away with something. That sounded about right. And that's why I knew I had to go one step further. I used to handle Matt's social media accounts when we worked together on small projects. Back when he was building a name in marketing, I was the guy doing the back-end strategy. I still had access to an old shared folder we used to brainstorm content and campaign plans. Inside was gold. Old drafts. Notes. A few sloppy password reminders. Including his personal email and a couple of reused passwords he'd bragged about never changing. It wasn't hacking. It was reading what was already in front of me. I got into his email in under 5 minutes. And what I found there? He was applying for a new job. One that required a character reference. He'd attached an embellished resume, left out the fact that he'd been let go under a cloud of office rumors. He even listed me as a professional reference. The nerve. So I did something petty. Something surgical. I contacted the hiring manager, using a very professional, carefully written email, and informed them of the real circumstances of Matt's departure from his last role. I attached no photos, no rants, just facts. Cold. Precise. Verified. A week later, Matt was rejected. I knew, because he emailed me. Just one sentence. "Why are you doing this?" I didn't answer. Meanwhile, Erin was unraveling. The calm, reflective version of her I'd seen in therapy was gone. She started blowing up my phone late at night, leaving voicemails that ranged from sobbing apologies to desperate pleas. "I can't sleep without you. I miss our family. I was stupid. I don't even talk to him anymore." I listened, but only once. Then I saved the voicemails. Just in case. She tried using Jacob too. Said things like, "Mommy's so lonely. Don't you wish Daddy would come back home?" But Jacob told me everything. And I called her out, cold and clear. "Don't use him as leverage, Erin. He's not a pawn in this. He's the only innocent one here." That shut her down for a while. The final blow came 2 months later. Jenny filed her lawsuit. Not just for full custody, but defamation, emotional distress, and breach of a morality clause in their original prenup. I didn't even know those were still a thing, but Jenny's lawyer was vicious. She had receipts. And she used everything I'd gathered. Matt lost everything. His license to work in certain corporate roles was under review. He had a court order preventing him from seeing his kids without supervision. His name became poison in our professional circles. And the best part? I never raised my voice. Never broke a window. Never sent a threatening message. I let the truth speak. Loud. Clear. Unforgiving. One night, about 4 months after I moved out, I was standing on the balcony of my new apartment. Jacob had gone to bed early, tired from soccer practice. I stood with a beer in hand, just watching the city lights blink like quiet stars. And for the first time in what felt like years, I felt light. Not happy exactly. But at peace. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from a number I deleted, but recognized instantly. "Erin, I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I want to thank you. For not destroying me the way you could have. I'm trying to be better. For Jacob. For myself. I hope one day you'll forgive me." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I locked my phone and went back inside. Some things don't need answers. I used to think closure came with fireworks. With some big emotional finale where one person breaks down, admits everything, and the other walks away victorious, chest out, head high. Like in the movies. But the truth is, real closure is quiet. It sneaks in on an ordinary Tuesday, when you're sipping coffee and realize the pain that used to sit in your chest like a stone, just isn't there anymore. That's what it felt like. One evening, I picked Jacob up from school. He was excited, his class was going on a weekend field trip to a science museum out of town, and they needed a few parent chaperones. He begged me to sign up. "I want you there, Dad," he said, bouncing in the passenger seat. "You always explain stuff cooler than the teachers." I smiled, a little choked up. "Yeah," I said, rubbing the back of his head. "Then I guess I better make sure I'm free." He nodded and looked out the window. Then, after a pause, he said, "Mom asked if she could come too." I didn't flinch. I told her it was up to you. That night, I lay in bed thinking about that. Not about Erin joining us, honestly, I didn't care either way, but about how my son had carried the weight of 2 broken adults without even realizing it. I hated that he'd been caught in the middle. But I loved how strong he'd become. He was more resilient than I ever gave him credit for. And maybe I was too. I hadn't seen Matt since everything fell apart. Not in person, anyway. But I'd heard whispers. Word travels fast in a town like ours. People had distanced themselves from him. Clients disappeared. He tried launching a side hustle, some low-effort podcast about marketing strategies, but it barely got off the ground. A mutual acquaintance told me he'd picked up a part-time bartending gig just to pay rent. He was living alone, no girlfriend, no friends left from his old circle. Apparently, he'd started going to AA meetings. Good. I didn't want him to suffer forever. I just wanted him to feel the cost of what he'd done. To understand that betrayal wasn't something you could walk away from unscathed. Same for Erin. She wasn't with him anymore. That part, I believed. She'd tried to piece her life back together after I left. She moved into a condo closer to Jacob's school, got a counselor, even joined a single-parent support group. I didn't hate her. I couldn't. Because hate still takes up space. And I'd spent too long letting her live rent-free in my mind. On the morning of the field trip, Erin and I ended up standing side by side in the school parking lot, waiting for the buses to arrive. She looked nervous, hugging her arms, her smile brittle when she saw me. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey," I replied. It was awkward at first, but not painful. Just unfamiliar. Like seeing someone you used to know in a dream. We watched Jacob run around with his friends, laughing, carefree. For a moment, it felt like nothing had changed. And then she turned to me. "Thank you," she said softly. "For still showing up. For him." I nodded. "He's the only part that ever mattered." She swallowed. "I know I've said it already, but I really am sorry." "I believe you," I said. She looked surprised. "You do?" I shrugged. "Took a while, but yeah. I believe you're sorry. I also believe you have to live with it." She blinked hard, then nodded. "I do," she said. "Every day." There was nothing left to say after that. And that was okay. The trip went smoothly. Jacob dragged me from exhibit to exhibit, asking questions, making jokes, pointing out random facts he'd read in books. I watched him light up with curiosity, joy, wonder. I hadn't seen that spark in a long time. Maybe I hadn't been looking. One of the other kids asked if I was a scientist. Jacob laughed. "No, my dad's not a scientist," he said proudly. "But he's smarter than most." I felt something loosen in my chest. Like a knot coming undone. After the trip, when we got home, Jacob fell asleep in the car. I carried him inside, laid him in bed, tucked the blanket around him like I used to when he was little. And then I sat on the couch, alone in the dark, and realized. I was happy. Not the kind of happy that comes with loud music or parties. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from peace. From survival. From rebuilding. About a week later, I got a letter in the mail. A real one. Handwritten. No return address. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Matt. I thought about tossing it in the trash without reading it. But curiosity won. It was short. "I know there's nothing I can say that would fix what I did. I betrayed the one person who had my back when no one else did. I lied to your face, used your kindness, and ruined something I should have respected. I've lost everything, and I deserved it. But I just want you to know, you were the better man. Always." I folded the letter and tucked it away in a drawer. Not because I forgave him. But because it no longer controlled me. Months passed. Life settled. I got promoted at work. I started running again. I met someone, unexpectedly, casually, no pressure. Her name was Claire. We met at a bookstore, of all places. She was funny, sharp, kind. Not a replacement. Just, new. Jacob liked her. And that meant everything. One day, while we were walking in the park, he turned to me and said, "You smile more now." I blinked. "I do." He nodded. "Yeah. I like it better this way." So did I. People talk about revenge like it's some grand explosion. But for me, it was something else entirely. It was taking my life back, piece by piece, and refusing to let the people who broke me define who I'd become. It was raising my son with integrity, showing him that strength isn't about screaming the loudest or hitting the hardest, it's about doing the right thing, even when your heart is shattered. It was about healing. Slowly. Quietly. Powerfully. And it was about walking forward, not looking back.